What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, award-winning. And as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I'm also a certified empowerment coach. I got to say that right. Empowerment coach. My lips got stucky there. Empowerment coach. And I also own president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. It's only Tuesday and it's been a week already on the Dr. Vibe Show. And I just did a Facebook Live to promote this conversation tonight. And I'm wondering if I should use the tagline, the home of epic conversations. What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna start using that as a tagline. All right. So yeah, Gracie too is on here, said her head is still reeling from last night. So good luck. If you missed last night, catch a replay. But the good thing is we're going to be continuing that type of dialogue Monday nights at 7 p.m. I'll get to that at the end of this. Yes, last night was epic, but now we got next epic. For those who know a little bit about me or been following for a bit, we do a weekly conversation for men. And we've been doing it for at least a year and a half, coming up 2 years now. So I said, let's think of this conversation topic. And it didn't come from me, it came from somebody else, about discussing manhood versus masculinity. So I know that Michael is not in for a long time, but I'm just going to go right quick. I'm going to give quick definitions of manhood. So I've looked some up and I'm going, So I'm going to throw out some different definitions I saw here about manhood. The qualities such as strength and courage that are expected of a man, the state or condition of being an adult man and no longer a boy. I don't know if those really tells us that much, but I'm also going to look at masculinity. Someone's got Skype going on. Who's got Skype going on? That is classic. I'm just doing right quick the definition of masculinity. Then I'm going to get Michael right quick in the show because he's got a show coming up at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm going to see if I can get a quick definition of masculinity. And then we're going to start off the conversation piece. Again, interesting definition, pertaining to or characteristic of a man, having qualities traditionally ascribed to men as strength and boldness. So with that nice vagueness, and also ladies, you are also wanting to come to the show tonight. You can do, and we lost Michael. What happened to Michael? Okay, no problem. So as always with my conversations, if you want to, yeah, he probably had a call on Skype. That was him. You can come on in either on the side or on the main platform. I appreciate everyone who's already in. And let's see if we can have some more epicness. I have a few questions. Yes, you can come in, Cream and Matt. No problem. So, Ahmed, let's talk about this conversation. Manhood, masculinity. Are there differences? Do you think there are? Start it off.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Vibe, and allowing me this platform to share what my definition is around manhood versus masculinity. I think that there's some distinct differences between the two, but I also think that at a point they intertwine as well. For me, manhood is about responsibility. I was just talking to someone recently, and it was from my high school days, and they asked me. They said, "Well, what happened? We didn't see you your senior year." And most people won't notice about me, but I dropped out. I dropped out of high school my senior year. I was senior class president, voted most likely to succeed, but I dropped out because I got a young lady pregnant.
Wow.
And I decided at that time that it was more important for me to provide for her and my child than it was for me to continue my education. So, but of course, the silver lining is I went back to school, went back to college, and made sure that I got that education in. But I took that as a responsibility on myself at that time. My mother was like, don't worry, we'll take care of, your family while you finish school. And I'm like, you didn't make the child, I made the child, so it's my responsibility. So for me, ultimately, manhood is about responsibility for my family, responsibility for my community as well.
Then what about masculinity?
I think that masculinity intersects with manhood to show, for me, my identity, to show that, of course, that I'm not feminine, but to exert my authority in my own life, to show that I'm strong, to show that I'm capable. So for me, masculinity, it has that, it's like that armor that I wear.
Okay. All right. No problem. Just want to shout out some people who have joined the conversation, and thank you so much, because some of these faces are familiar from last night. So I hope you haven't had enough of, it doesn't sound like you had enough of Dr. Vibe yet. And I use the word yet. So I just want to shout out some people. As always, at 123 Honeylyn Jones, thanks again for stopping by. Leroy McKenzie, thank you so much. I have Kamisha James, thank you so much for stopping by. And Danny Redwine, you were on fire last night, Danny. So thank you so much, and I'm glad you got the energy to come back. And of course, we have Dante Godfrey and also Askia Jones. Hey, if anyone wants to take an open seat, bring it on. Come on in. Love you to join. And Miss Rashim, aren't you tired yet of me? My gosh. Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
That's better.
That's good, because I laugh so loud.
It's all right. Laughter's a good
I don't
thing.
have any definitions about manhood or masculinity, really. You know what I mean? I think that's up for the men to kind of self-define. But I do have some questions around it.
Bring it on.
So I have two that comes top of mind. One, when you talk about masculinity, do you feel as though women can be masculine? And the other question that I have is, can a person experience manhood without going through boyhood?
She's starting up already.
Can you tell me, did you come off a blab from last night yet? Have you been on since last night? Okay. So I'm two fabulous. Yes, Askia Jones, we need you on, because that's Askia language. So what was the second one first? Give me the second one again.
Can a person experience manhood? Can they reach manhood without going through boyhood?
Well, I think, I don't know if I reached manhood without going through boyhood. I feel like that my parental nurturing was cut short because now I became a parent. But I think that you have boyhood, malehood, and then manhood. So you have a lot of people get stuck at malehood, and they talk about, you hear them saying things like I might be dating myself, but you hear things like my pad or my crib or, my ride, that kind of language to me indicates that I'm talking to a male and not a man. When he starts to identify with things instead of the qualities, his personal qualities. So to answer the question directly, I'm not sure if a person can go from boyhood to manhood. Maybe those time frames are shortened. I'm going to just leave it right there.
This is a little bit my take, and I don't usually get involved in the conversations, but I'm going to throw in my thought process here because I like to steer the ship, not drive the ship. I think one can get to manhood without going through boyhood, but I think it's a much more challenging experience if you don't go through the boyhood first. It can be done, but I think there's something. Have you ever met people, male or female, that didn't have a childhood?
That would be me.
That
would be me.
Didn't have a childhood. You can certainly get to that manhood stage, but I think you're missing out if you don't go through that childhood, because we were chatting last night that a lot of young people of color are not enjoying their young days right now because they're basically being thrown in or not getting a chance to experience their youth, and they're just being thrown in. I say it can be done, but I think you're missing out a little bit if you don't get a chance to enjoy that. Continue the conversation. I'll be back in just a second.
Can everybody hear me? I seem to have problems with my camera.
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you. I see the bars.
Interesting. Well, I guess I'll just talk.
Yeah. Go ahead, brother.
Oh man. So what were those questions again? Okay, I don't hear Rasheem.
Sorry, so you didn't get my reference to you being.
You know what, Rasheem? You know what I want you to do? I want you to actually type those questions in the comments.
Sure.
So keep those as a conversation. Welcome, Charles, Carrie, welcome. Welcome, Revel. And if anyone wants to come in tonight, just give me a holler.
I apologize for the bars, Dr. Vi. For some reason, my camera's not working, but at least you get the audio. Man.
You're here in soul. No problem. Make it happen.
Askia, it's a pleasure to share the platform with you too, bro.
Oh man, the pleasure's all mine. Pleasure's all mine. Well, as she's typing that in, we had this conversation a while ago, and I think there's a distinct difference. Masculinity is a rejection to everything that is feminine, and the reason why I say that is because masculinity is male is biological. Masculinity is a construct. Because basically masculinity deals with the aspect of all those things that don't make me feminine. For example, the masculinity aspect is when we tell kids, don't cry. We tell young boys, or man up. We use words like no homo, don't be weak. Don't let somebody punk you. Those are things that reflect masculinity. Many times masculinity is associated with, let's say, athletic ability. I'm masculine because of my size, my strength, my skill set. Manhood is completely different. I like what Ahmed said. Malehood, the difference between the two unique differences between masculinity and manhood is that masculinity teaches men to purchase women. Manhood teaches women to protect women. Let me give you an example. Because of the misogynist nature that comes with masculinity, a lot of times we use certain words like, oh man, did you hit that? I'm going to tap that. I'm going to tear that up. Oh man, I stabbed that. I beat that. Listen to the music and the lyrics of how we use love language, but we're using words that speak to violence because those things are associated with showing my masculinity, So what happens is we begin to treat women like objects. We begin to treat that love language in terms of violence. We begin to get caught up in figuring out how can we exert our masculinity to get monetary gain, to achieve social status, to achieve the acquisition of things. That's where masculinity comes in. But like Ahmed said, when you really speak into manhood, you're talking about the accountability aspect. You're talking about the aspect of, when she mentioned about being a boy, I think there's a difference. Being a boy means the difference between being a boy and being a man is that the commonality is that you're still a male. You're born a male, but that doesn't make you a man. The difference between a boy and a man is that a boy still feels like he needs to be served. When we're kids, our mom serve us, our dad serve us, our community serves us, our teachers serve us, our grandparents serve us. But when you are a man, you understand, like Ahmed said, It is my obligation to serve my wife, to serve my children, to serve my community, to step up. Like he said, he saw the need to step up and be a man. I made this bed, therefore I need to make it up. So I'll start it out by saying those are, to me, the two distinct differences between masculinity and manhood.
And it's interesting these days with the world of media, world of communication. I'm going to steal the Robin Thicke line. It seems that there's so many blurred lines when it comes to this topic.
Rashim asks, are there rites of passage that you think we can associate with manhood? For example, things that after you experience X, Y, Z, you are officially a man. I think that's where it goes into masculinity again. Having sex for the first time. Okay, you're a man. In gangs, I've shared conversation about how I grew up in very distressed, underserved areas that was plagued by gangs and poverty. So a lot of times young guys had to do certain things like rob and steal as a rite of passage to show their masculinity, to show that I'm worthy, to show that I'm a man. If I do this, if I have sex with this woman, if I shoot this guy, if I rob or steal this, those things anytime you have to do something to prove yourself as a man, then that manhood doesn't exist then. Because you have to earn it. I can't do anything. I have to, if I'm a good father, I'm not a good father because I say I'm a good father. I'm a good father because my children identify me as a good father, because of the relationship that I have with my children. So I can say I'm a good father all day long. I can say I'm a man all the time. We talked about earlier, I think in another conversations, we have so many women, I'm just going to be open, so many beautiful Black women that are broken because they've chosen to reward masculinity instead of rewarding manhood.
That's a big, and Askia, do not just don't limit that to color. I think that's a general statement.
Well, it's a general statement, but I'm speaking based on my experience. Growing up as a single mother.
Okay, well, I'll just piggyback. That needs to be a general statement.
No, it does. It really does.
I know.
It really does.
In the words of Dr. Vibe, that's a knowledge bomb.
Yeah. That's a knowledge bomb you just dropped on there. Just before we go further, I'd just like to say shout out to at the Split Verse. If I'm not mistaken, she's from Toronto. Of course, welcome to Tachi. Welcome to Sir Charles Carey, and welcome from over the ocean, Dr. Leon. What is up? This is good. And Team Event says AOL, has the AOL got you, Askia?
Now I'm playing around with a different camera thingy, so I think something in my preferences. So I haven't been on camera in a while. So
there are some great questions that are coming out, so I'm trying to get to them. And actually, Tachi, why don't you come on and ask the question you've asked twice? I want you to ask that question live to our audience.
Come on, Tachi.
If you're blab ready, because I know this is a blab ready thing. But I'm going to try to get to everyone's, put out the questions, and don't let us be the conversation piece. Also, on the side, you can be the conversation piece. Also, there are some great, I don't know. Okay, Tashiata is not going to come on because I see the so let me go back on up the scroll here. There was a question. Oh, Efrashim has another great conversation piece. Is masculinity something that is associated with hormones and testosterone, or does the biology not matter?
Again, I think, and this is just me, just from working with social workers, mentoring young men, speaking with child psychologists, speaking with educators, as they help me become a better mentor, working with youth. I've had the privy to have conversations to kind of understand the psyche as it relates to young men that are dealing with all different types of issues, from abandonment, loss of family, just depression, all different types of things. I would say the biological aspect, masculinity is not organic. It's reactive. It's not developed. Masculinity is taught. It's a reaction to something based on growing up in an environment where I've been told that I have to be a certain way. I have to do a certain thing. Again, male is biological. I'm born a male because I have something that identifies me as a male. Masculinity is like race. Go ahead, Dr. Vibe.
Yeah, I got a question there. So are you saying, and correct me if I'm not right here, are you saying manhood is not taught, masculinity is taught?
No. I said masculinity is not organic.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, you're not born with a masculinity trait. You're born either male or female. You mean masculine?
Okay. I just did that for clarification for everybody.
Masculinity is a construct that's taught to our youth to teach them to act a certain way, to behave a certain way. It's a reaction. You're not masculine unless you walk this way, unless you talk this way, unless you act this way. That's what makes you masculine. Not a man or not a male, but masculinity. Stop crying. Or when a guy says, hey man, love you, man, no homo. I got it by me saying no homo. That's my way of saying, hey man, I'm not a punk, and I'm only using that word, in this context is that I'm trying to prove my masculinity. I'm not trying to prove my manhood. I'm trying to prove my masculinity again, because most times masculinity is associated 2 or 3 ways. One is associated through size, strength, and skill set. Men are elevated, being a man, because we know that being a man has nothing to do with athletic ability, right? But masculinity is associated with size. Masculinity is associated with strength. Superheroes, Batman, chef, swag, whatever it is. Masculinity is also associated with economic success. One of my favorite quotes is comparison is the thief to all happiness. So what happens is what masculinity does is allow me to look at a man and see what he has and say, man, I need to step my game up. I need to do this. He's driving this car, and that's why I say women reward masculinity more than they reward manhood. That's why we have so many groupies. Because what groupies do is they look at the acquisition of things. They look at the LeBron. I'm being honest. There's a reason why you got a guy like Lil Wayne who looks like he got ran over by a herd of alpacas, but he can get any woman he wants to get. There's a reason for that. Does he look like a man, really? Let's just be real. Does he act like a man? Does his lyrics portray manhood, the way he misogynized women, the way he talk bad about women, the way he degrade women? Does that reflect manhood? But he's rewarded for his lyrics. He's rewarded for his success. There's a reason for that. And that's what masculinity does.
Okay. Ahmed and audience, what do you have to say with what Askia has shared? You can either come on. There is an open seat. I know Tachi is going to come on, but hey, while she's getting herself blab ready, as we like to say, is anyone wanting to add? There are 4 P's that I think. Okay, Ash Rashim, what are the 4 P's that you're saying when you think of manhood? And also, I know there is a question or 2 that I still have to put out there.
That's what I like.
There was a question by a gentleman. Let me just scroll up. He asked, how could one miss boyhood? Yes, how would one miss boyhood? Dan Cronenberg said, how would one miss boyhood? And we'll chat about that. Then we'll get to Tashi's knowledge bomb double question. So how would one miss boyhood? Do you think it's possible for a man to miss boyhood? Sorry.
Yes. Can I before we get too deep, let me chime in on that part of it, because I think that that applies directly to me. As a young child, my entire family came to me for advice. So at the age of 6 and 7 years old, I had an affinity for reading the books that my dad left behind. So I was reading, at 5 and 6, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Think and Grow Rich. I was reading the books that my dad left behind. So my family would come to me and ask me questions, how to resolve financial issues, how to resolve issues relating to relationships. And for me, that experience, I think, robbed me of my boyhood. And it constantly kept me in a state of solving problems. And now one of the challenges that I have, it works perfectly fine for me in business. I'm used to solving problems. Sometimes in my relationship, I have to check myself to make sure that when I'm listening to my wife, that I'm not actively trying to solve a problem, that I'm mostly focused on listening intently and leaving it right there and waiting for her to ask me for a solution before I provide one.
Okay. Anyone else want to add it on that before we let Tachi come on in? Anyone else? I hope that answers your question, sir, in regards to there's an example of how a man can miss boyhood and lose out on some manhood and some masculinity. So boyhood and childhood are the same, are they? Ahmed or Skia?
Yeah, I would say it's the same, because all hood means is like the state of, like, womanhood, manhood, neighborhood. So it is the childhood, as a boy, my time as a child, basically. And I can agree with Ahmed. I can attest that I had to grow up a lot quicker, and I missed out on a lot of things because I grew up with a single mother who depended on me and needed me to be a lot older, faster than most kids. So there are a lot of things I had to do at a young age while kids were out playing and having a good time. I'm actually helping my mom pay bills at a young age. And so you can definitely miss out on boyhood. You can definitely miss out on childhood.
And I spent that time, like at 7, I was a barber. So I was cutting all the kids' hair in the neighborhood to get money for my family.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to say, Ahmed and Askia, thank you so much for being transparent, because I believe that's part of manhood and masculinity, being transparent. And I know women appreciate that. And I know there's some men out there that appreciate it also. Tachi, thanks so much for coming on in and getting Blab ready for us. Drop your question, because it's a big one.
So I'm wondering, especially if you don't know, a little while ago, apparently one of the historically Black fraternities took in their first transgendered member. And it got me to thinking, when I'm seeing these questions, especially what Rashim asked, where the transgendered male fits into the whole concept of masculinity and what masculinity is.
That is a knowledge bomb question.
Yeah.
And you know what? I just want everybody to know I'm really having problems. I really wish y'all could see my face, because I want y'all to
wish I could see your face.
I'm being completely honest. So I am, anybody, for all the people that don't know me, they'll tell you I'm not afraid. I speak my mind. I really wish y'all could see my face. Yeah, I'm gonna say this. Because of, and this is not just me. There's a lady by the name of Dr. Heldman. She's a political scientist and educator. I'm gonna see if I can find information. I'm gonna put it in the box. She talks about masculinity, and I did a lot of research with her when I began to really get into mentorship, because I need to understand, because I'm dealing with different types of young men. some men that some people would, and I'm not saying how I identify, but how society identifies as overly sensitive. Some that are dealing with depression, some that are dealing with putting up these walls where they feel like they have to try to, be harder than they really are. So I've had to learn how to ingratiate myself in certain situations where I'm being, as we talked about, transparent and able to communicate myself in a way where I can be as open and honest and help them, move into the direction where I'm placing their life to take them. I have mentored young men who are gay and homosexual. I mentor them the same way, with love, compassion, but I come to them as a man. I don't come to them more sensitive than I would anybody else. I don't come to them more hard. I don't try to get them to man up. I don't try to get them to be someone that they have already shown me that they're not. But with that said, it is important that if we understand masculinity, and that the term masculinity, it is not organic. It is a reaction. It is something that society has ingrained in us as a social construct, that they're telling us, put your poker face on, pick yourself up, stop crying, don't snitch. These are things that exude masculinity, not manhood, masculinity. So if you are a transgender, if you are then you can't identify with those things. You become victims of those things. You become a victim of the of the people that are exerting their masculinity and begin to possibly begin to bully a person that is transgender or bully a person that is homosexual. So they fall out of the masculinity box and they become sometimes victims, or sometimes what they try to do is try to exert themselves and say, hey, I don't want nobody to know right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and try to compensate by dressing a certain way, talking a certain way, maybe even becoming over sexually with women when they're not even attracted to women, because they don't want to be bullied. So I would have to say they don't exist in that area of masculinity. I think they are struggling with how do they deal with people that are identified as masculine, but they can't exist in that area.
If I may ask you, my dear friend Askia, so actually, who was it? The split verse, and I was thinking the same thing. If you're saying that masculinity is a social construct, like race is a social construct, it's not something that is biological, why then is it so difficult to accept that a transgendered male can be masculine, or anyone can exhibit traits of masculinity? Just want to hear your thoughts on that.
I think because if we identify, and this is just me talking, if we identify it as a social construct, it's like saying, for example, blackness. Well, blackness is a prescribed identity that was created by Europeans. Blackness, black, right? So if blackness is a prescribed identity, therefore a social construct in itself, then how can the alternative, how can somebody, okay, like this is what she said. She said, what if they demonstrate all the characteristics of masculinity? How are you to thine own self be true? How can you, if you are not masculine, how can you authentically demonstrate something that you are not? If you are demonstrating that, are you true? I mean, I'm just being honest. If you are demonstrating that, are you being true or are you being false? If you're demonstrating as a way to camouflage who you really are, then it's not masculinity.
Well, you know what? And here's the thing. I appreciate what you're saying. And to me, there are a lot of people that feel the same way. I just think if you ask somebody who is transgendered, or you know what, let's take it for a minute to the race thing. Rachel Dolezal will argue all day long that she is black. we know that she's not Black. But there have been so many theories thrown around, whether you believe them or not. There have been so many theories thrown around about her identifying with Blackness so much that she self-identifies as such. I mean, you can say what you want, you're still not Black, but the point is she's not self-identified with that, and she's taken on those characteristics. So now let's look at the back at this thing. Why is it so hard to believe? And I'm not, either taking up or discrediting either side. I'm just wondering if we're saying point blank that it's a social construct. It doesn't mean anything outside of, because now what's happening is it kind of seems like you are now connecting masculinity to maleness and saying that in order to exhibit masculinity, one has to also be of the male persuasion. So now the two are connected, but it cannot be a social construct separate from maleness and also connected to maleness.
No, so I'm saying in order to, and I hope I say that I'm going to try to articulate this as best as possible. In order to exude masculinity, you have to have bought into what you are issuing out as what you're supposed to be doing. If you have bought into that, like that's why I say it is a reaction. If I'm being told constantly as a kid, stop crying, man up, do this, then sooner or later that becomes how I begin to treat other people. That's how I begin to act in this space. Now I'm not saying you have to be that has nothing to do with manhood, but what I'm saying is if you haven't bought into it and you are saying that I'm doing this to prove something, okay, then you can say, well, that is an aspect of masculinity. Mm-hmm. I'll agree with you on that. That is you trying to exude masculinity to prove something. Therefore, you're right. That is masculinity. But what I'm saying is that you have to ask the important question: why are you doing this? If this is not who you really are, what are you gaining out of this, and what are you trying to prove out of it?
But can we say this is not who you really are? Because think about it, who would really choose persecution? Who really would want to be persecuted for this? I think that in some cases, and this is not to say there are some people who are being inauthentic. You're absolutely right. But then there are probably those people who feel that this is really, and I'll give you a quick example. So I was working on a web series for a while, and the woman who was the host, it was a masculine, she calls herself a masculine identifying lesbian. And when we were doing her story and taping her, she was saying from the time she was little, she asked her mother, can I not wear, please don't buy me any more dresses. And she was like young. She said from the time she was 5, she asked her mother to cut her hair. And she was like, when people would think that she was a little boy, she would just smile and get really happy. So that kind of shows that she had some level of not necessarily maleness, because she recognizes she's a woman, but masculine leaning traits according to society. That's why I think it's hard to put a label on it and say that people are being inauthentic. That's just my thought.
Okay.
Well, let me just add, taking it the other way, there's a transgendered female that is an MMA fighter. And I was like, okay, let's see how this is going to play out. And when I saw the match, I'm like, that is a man in the ring fighting a woman. Because I know masculinity and maleness when I see it. And I could see that this individual was 10 to 20 times stronger than the female that they were fighting. So I don't.
But is that maleness more than it is masculinity? Because the fact is, okay, being a male, like Skia was saying, is biologically prescribed. And so if you are male, you are going to probably have some traits. You're going to be taller. by, you know, in many stances. You may be stronger. So there may be some maleness or traits of being a biological male. Although if you're a transgender, you have started to go through the process or are in the process of trying to diminish that. Now, you can argue whether or not that really works. You can argue all day long. But I think what we're talking about here is maleness as opposed to masculinity. Or
okay,
I could be wrong.
Not to cut you off, are you talking about transgender from female to male?
Yes, yeah. A transgender male is a female who becomes a male.
Okay, yeah. I apologize. I thought you meant a transgender from a male to a female.
No, but yeah, exactly. No, I get it. No, they would be a transgendered woman. And it does get confused because I have
right. That's why I was confused.
Myself. Yeah,
right. That's now, yeah. If you're saying a transgender from a female to a male, sure.
Yeah, okay,
exactly. Yeah, no, I'm thinking you're talking about a male that now says, I don't want to be a male. I want to be a female. So I'm trying to figure out how can masculinity exist in that?
Oh, yeah, no, it doesn't exist. And arguably, it may never have existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I brought up that issue, because I was like, I think I'm following this skill, but suddenly I got lost.
I'm thinking, we can't see your face. That's why.
I'm thinking she's saying a male who now wants to be a female.
No, other way around. Around. So I'm just wondering where masculinity fits in for them. Yeah.
Of course. Absolutely. Matter of fact, you might even see it more.
Interesting.
Yeah, you might even see it more. Yeah.
Yeah, because that female may have actually gone and really studied the traits and what they are, and may have, you know, identified them. Whereas as a male, you know, sometimes we just allow things to happen. But that female may have gone and actually dissected each characteristic and made, you know, a meal out of it.
I don't know if this is a word. Matter of fact, I'll even say this. I think I've even seen, when you talk about going from female to male, I've seen it almost over masculinized. I don't know if that's a word, but I've seen it like it's even like
hyper masculinized,
even like further than what some men would how some men would take it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I've seen the other way around where there are some, I'm like, I don't really know very many women that act like as feminine as, you know, as the other way around as well.
Yeah.
So
no, that's my apology. That's why I was trying to figure out, like, and I saw a man's face, and I'm like, I'm in my mind, I'm like, but how can you be masculine if you're going from, if that's what you're rejecting, if you're going from a male to a female, right? You see what I'm saying?
Right. Well, then can I ask you this, both for Ahmed and Askia, in terms of, so I'm going to go back to the thing that I brought up, that one of the NPHC organizations just took in their first transgendered male, meaning he was a woman before and became a male. I kind of want to know your feelings about that, knowing that, number one, our communities tend to be very homophobic and very anti-transgender, and number two, that our organizations for men also tend to be very hyper masculine. I just kind of wanted to know what your feelings on that were, because I got some feedback from some members of some NPHC, and I was, you know, to the point of, if they're in our organization, they better not say anything. So wondering what you thought about that.
Tachi, you are asking some really hard questions.
You know what, Tachi? I want to start by saying this. You mentioned Rachel Dolezal, right?
Yes.
And I'm assuming, and I hate to assume, so I'm going to assume that you probably took some issue with that, or did you not? I'm just asking. I'm not 100% sure.
I have issue with you being something that you're not, when you could have used your advantage to be an ally. We were at Howard University at the same time, just not in the same department. So you were clearly Caucasian then. So That's my issue, not my issue that it's not my issue that she identified as being Black. My issue is that you used that to escape whatever you were running from, and you could have been a better ally to us as you were. That's just me.
All right, I would like to propose this. I feel as though, and let me say this first, because I know some Black women might want to get upset. I understand she can turn the switch on and off. I get it. At any point in time, she could turn that switch on. She could be white one day, she can be Black one day. We can even say that about, let's say, gay white men. I'm only using that as an example. If they want to use an advantage, and because they know they're going into a corporation where they may be scrutinized, unfortunately, because people are, are probably not going to treat them with the respect they deserve, treat them like the human beings that they deserve to be treated, because they're homophobic or something like that, then they may say, you know what, I'm going to turn that switch off. And I've even heard Blacks as minorities say, how can you say you are a minority when we're still Black every single day, but you want to be identified as a minority? I'm only bringing this up as a minority when you can turn that switch off. You don't have to let people know that this is who you believe that you are. I think the problem with Rachel Dolezal was that she didn't have a community. That community does not exist yet. The LGBT community, unfortunately, for years, they didn't have a community. So you had gay and lesbians who had to hide behind what they identify as their truth, because they were afraid that they'd be persecuted. They were afraid that they would be, their families would disown them. So what did they do? They hid, and they did this thing that we call, they stayed in the closet. But when the community lifted itself and they began to go out and say, you know what, come out, we got you. We're going to support you. We're behind you. Then all of a sudden we begin to celebrate. It's a celebration. And now when an athlete comes out or a person comes out, we tweet and we celebrate. We say, hey, own your truth. We tell them that. Well, I challenge people to say the same thing about a Rachel Dolezal. Although you're right about what she did at the university, this was a woman that they made clear did an amazing job with the NAACP. Did an outstanding job. Matter of fact, was people. She was celebrated for the work and the impact she was having in the community through NAACP. But all of a sudden, what I hated was as soon as they realized she wasn't Black, it was like, be gone. As if we'd rather have a Black person come in that's not as qualified and that doesn't have the same self-interest for the community coming to her place than someone who identifies themselves, don't have the community of other people that have this, what we call this racial identity issue going on, where they identify themselves this way and say, hey, we got you, Rachel.
Yeah,
but she doesn't have that yet.
I get it. I get it. I think, I'm sorry, Dr. Vibe. I think part of the issue is that we have had a history of people infiltrating and not being honest with us. And I think part of the anger and issue is with that. Not that she did not do an amazing job, but as I said, I was the president of our chapter of the NAACP at the University of Buffalo. Our treasurer was white. There was no rule that said, and as has been so pointed out before, the NAACP was founded by a collective of both Black and white individuals interested in that at the time, but through the Niagara movement. So it had nothing to do. It was for the upliftment of people Black people, but it was both that brought it together. So there's no written rule that says you cannot be white and have some leadership position in the NAACP. I think now it looks like, so why are you hiding? I think that's part of it. What was the impetus to lie?
Okay.
Right.
I want to steer the conversation back to men because we're getting a little bit off on this. So I want to steer it back because that conversation now is going to be for Monday nights. After last night. I want to address
a question. I want Ahmed to answer this one first. Somebody asked, can a woman teach a young boy manhood?
No.
And I'm glad you said it that quickly. I agree. Because I agree 100%.
Manhood is taught a lot of times non-verbally. Manhood is taught by the sound of my voice, my handshake, my scruffy beard rubbing up against my child's face, my child seeing the way that I'm walking with my head, chin up, shoulders back, chest out. Manhood is taught in a lot of ways like that. Or I guess in this conversation, we could say masculinity and maleness into masculinity. And then the manhood evolves from seeing the responsibility that is handled by the person that is a masculine male as well, moving into manhood. So I think that a female trying to, because she goes to the basketball games and she cheers and everything like that, she's being now both the mother and the father. I think that's delusional.
I agree. I had a fascinating conversation with the individual, and he kept using the words. He said, my mom filled both voids. She was my mom and my dad. And I said, no, I grew up raised by a single mother. She was a fantastic single mother. She did an amazing job. She was a great mom, but she did not fill that void of a dad. I didn't have that void. The void wasn't filled, but she did a fantastic job as a mother. It's almost like saying, I got a friend of mine that has a brother and sister. I only have a brother, so I'm going to my brother and say, hey, I need you to fill that void as a sister. I don't have a sister. Can you fill that void as my sister? Because all my friends have brothers and sisters, and all I have is a brother. So I need you to fill both voids for me.
Right.
And that can't be done. I can't expect my brother to be my brother and my sister, like I can't expect my mom to be my mom and my dad. My mom was an exceptional mom. She did an amazing job. But that void was not filled. She didn't fill it.
Can I ask a question of Scared?
No, I just want to do one thing before you go ahead, Tachi. One of the things that we had talked about last night was treating people respectfully. And there is someone who has used some language that I do not approve.
Really?
And I'm not going to tell who it is. If you look in the timeline, there's a word that I don't appreciate being used in my forum. Now, I'm going to keep you in, but please, if you use it again, I will block you. And I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to, if you look in the timeline, there was some language I did not appreciate being used.
Okay, whatever.
If you disagree with a point, there is a way to handle it. I'm hosting this. If you can't handle yourself respectfully, please either change the way you're doing it or I will block you. Continue on, Tachi.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I've been admonished now, so I'm like, I want to ask before I go a question of Ahmed and Askia. Do you think that concepts of masculinity and or maleness or manhood transcend culture, or does the concept of masculinity, maleness, and or manhood, does that transcend culture? Meaning, is it culturally prescribed? Is it different depending on what culture you're in, or do you think that's something that is kind of static across cultures?
Well, I haven't been to a lot. I haven't experienced a lot of cultures, so I have to assume and say yes, because everybody's all culture. For example, in Jewish customs, you become a man at a very young age. Mm-hmm. So there's a timeline that you're associated as being a man. In some cultures, it's when you achieve a certain feat. If you achieve a certain thing, then you've reached that. So I'll have to say yes. totally. It's not consistent. It's not the same.
Yeah, and I think that it's taught differently. You might have, like Askia was referencing earlier, you might have, in a Black community, that a young male is being challenged to do certain things to prove his masculinity. Whereas, let's say, and I hope that I'm not offensive when I say this or generalizing, but in the Asian culture, you might have a young boy, his completion of the Shaolin Temple, his studies at the Shaolin Temple might be a symbol of his completing his manhood training. So, and again, even, a Jewish kid having a bar mitzvah might be a symbol. Whereas when you look at that 13-year-old Jewish boy, in reality, he may not even be displaying characteristics of manhood as we know it, but for them and their culture, he is now respected as being a man.
Right.
Cool beans. Thank you. I'm going to let somebody else come in.
No problem, Tashi. Thanks for making the conversation better. I
Thank
appreciate it.
Honor and respect, Tachi.
Right back. Okay. There is a seat open. I'm going to make one last comment about this individual who's asking me why I find that word disrespectful. Because I do. If you don't like it, you don't have to be here. Simple as that. There's a time and a place for everything. I don't appreciate that word being used in a public forum. If you do, fine, but not here. Thanks very much. Let's continue on. So in regards to Matt, so when we look, and there is a seat open if anyone else wants to jump in, I thank everybody who's on the side here. Is there a blurred line when it comes to manhood and masculinity in 2016?
Oh, geez. I'm just gonna say yes.
You're just gonna leave it at that.
Look,
because you know what I'll do. You know what I'll do with when you guys give short answers. That means they're gonna come back next week and ask it again.
Are we talking about differences in culture, or
that's true?
I mean, because I can only answer it. I can answer it several different ways, but I can really answer. If you're asking me as a Black man, is there a blurred line between masculinity and manhood? Then absolutely yes, because one of the things that has been taken away from my culture is a rites of passage, and that's what I was just identifying with as it related to a Jewish kid, that he has a rite of passage that takes him from boyhood into manhood. I don't specifically know that there is a rite of passage for, let's say, an Asian kid, but I think that the culture has been intact for so long that I'm sure that they have ceremonies and customs that act as a rite of passage. And I mean, I've been involved with the Asian community since I was 4 years old because I've constantly studied martial arts. So I've kind of seen some things that I would think is a rite of passage that we are lacking in the Black community.
Okay. And one of the things that's interesting doing a lot of these conversations are the more I have these conversations across, especially cross cultures, the more I see similarities, just that they're presented in different ways. There are different tests in different cultures in regards to manhood. But I will say, and I can speak best only from a Black heritage, that the manhood test or the masculinity test is not as prevalent as it used to be. I think here's a funny thing. I think one of the greatest tests of manhood is if you can understand when your dad gives you the talk.
Right. Well, it's like we said, sex is biological, being a male, but gender is a social construct. It's socially constructed. That's where masculinity fits into the gender aspect, not the actual biological aspect.
Okay. We'll see. Will's going to come in, touch out of the talk I'm talking. The talk I'm mentioning is that, how to survive out there in the world being a black man.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the birds and bees talk.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about manhood and masculinity because and again, I'll just speak from a black man's perspective. Manhood and masculinity these days is survival.
One of the things before we move on, and first of all, I see Will in, so definitely want to see Will. Something that Shireen put in that I don't want to overlook because we kind of strayed off. She put her 4 P's, yes. And I really like those 4 P's. I think I'm going to steal them. She put protector, provider, partner, and paternal, and I really like that. Matter of fact, I absolutely love that because it even spoke to Ahmed's testimony of him saying, you know what, I'm excelling in academics at high school. I'm president of my student body, but it's time for me to take a paternal responsibility, to be a partner for my whether he realized that's going to be his future wife or not. We need to partner in this child's life to make sure this child has the best future possible. I need to remove myself from high school to be the best provider so I can make myself accessible to be a great protector. I absolutely love those 4 P's. And the reason why I say that is because what masculinity has done is that I've always said this when I talk to kids. I said masculinity teaches you how to purchase women. Manhood teaches you how to protect women. And to give you an idea what I mean by that is that we purchase when you buy into this construct, this misogynist construct of how to treat women as objects, which is when we talk about, man, I'm going to hit that. I'm going to cut that. I want a piece of that. I'm going to tear that up. We're talking about women as objects, and we're using words of violence to replace acts of love. What we've done is we've bought into this system that I need to do that I can purchase women. And how do we purchase them? We purchase them through pornography. We purchase them through prostitution. And we also purchase them through success. Because if I feel as though I've achieved monetary gain, social status, or the acquisition of things, I can have any woman I want. And what I love about the partner aspect she brought in, then what happens is that that masculine aspect teaches me not to be a loyal partner to one woman. It teaches me that I have to go out, and what makes me a man is that I can go out and have any woman I want. And we're rewarded for that. That masculinity rewards these men by saying, oh man, I got 3 girls. Oh man, I got 4 girls. I'm about to leave this girl and go to this girl house. And what happens is that's the masculinity aspect of where these men, these young boys, have not learned how to be a man, how to be a protector, how to be a provider, how to be paternal, how to be a partner. So I didn't want to overlook that. I just thought those were some really, really strong points she shared.
One more thing for let's see, Will on 2 more things. Akia, Dan Kohlenberg has contested something that you mentioned. You may want to respond to him on the side. I will add another layer to what was said about the 4 Ps, and this is a whole different conversation. But one of my mentors taught me there are 4 powers that every man has, there's 4 powers of manhood: the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the king. That's a whole different conversation in regards to manhood. But if men think about that and women think about men, those are 4 key areas of a man: the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the king. So that just adds another layer to the 4 Ps that was mentioned. That's a whole other conversation. That was taught to me by one of my mentors. And we actually did a while back in this series 4 separate conversations about that. So if anyone wants the links to any of those conversations, and I will give the credit to, why am I forgetting? Mankind Project in Chicago. Why am I forgetting my friend's name? Glenn Barker. He introduced that concept to me. That was a whole, like, that teaching. I would suggest anybody, male, female, young, old, you need to watch that, because that's a whole other level on when it comes to the manhood thing.
Can I respond to Dr. Dan Kohlenberg?
Yeah.
I know you passed it to Askia, but so my wife, so Mr. Kohlenberg said that females don't need no dang male to protect them, and I would totally disagree with that. Number one, and I'm just speaking from my own cultural perspective, that our culture has been destroyed, because when those men were removed from the African continent, that the females definitely didn't have, and they in no way could they protect the land from invaders, from coming in and just taking over everything. My wife constantly says that she adores me because of my role as a protector. So I think that now I'm not saying what women need. I'm reiterating the point of what my wife says to me as a woman, that she appreciates having a protector. And I talk to a lot of my wife's friends that are female, and they say the same thing, that I wish I had a man to protect me. So I just disagree with that.
See,
comment.
the problem with that.
I'm gonna hold you off, because C-Will, if we don't let C-Will in with you two, he's never gonna get a word in. So
I'm sorry, brother C-Will.
Respectfully, Askia, can I just have you hold off for a moment?
Yeah, and I think I'll add.
Can't.
So that's one of the reasons I actually jumped in, because I was listening, and since we're coming to this, this place of clarification, I did appreciate everything you said, but I think you were really targeting misogyny rather than masculinity. And so if I could add this to the conversation about masculinity, I view masculinity in more of a universal way, meaning, kind of in a line with thinking of alchemy or universal laws, as far as masculinity is more of a way that we use our energy, and generally, societally speaking, men use more of the masculine energy, right? But I believe that we both have masculine and feminine energy, regardless of what race what gender you are, right? And you can choose to use more or less of it as you would. And so, for an example, the masculine energy is more assertive, right? And the feminine energy is more receptive. It's like positive and negative, right? That's why you have the phallus is always projecting, out into the world, right? And so if you take that kind of thinking and apply it to manhood, I was listening and I was thinking, okay, what does manhood mean? Well, first I just wanted to bring that clarification for you, Ski, as far as misogyny. I think a lot of that, what you are attributing to masculinity, is really just straight up misogyny, right? It's just superiority complex.
No, you came into a later part of the conversation when I was speaking about that aspect of it. We talked about the social construct of it. So I think you just happened to come in when I was talking about another aspect, when I was bringing up the how I differentiate manhood from masculinity as it relates to how the societal influence and what it does. You know, what masculinity does when you buy into it, it begins to entitle men with power.
Well,
And
that's where the difference is. That's where the debate is that I understand what you're saying. I'm just, as far as my definition of the word masculinity, it doesn't maybe that's the society definition that you're kind of addressing, right? Is that to be masculine means to, own women and to
no, no,
degrade them
no,
and
no,
all
no,
that.
no, no. Masculinity is a rejection of everything that is feminine. I
No,
mean, you
I
can
don't
talk.
agree. I don't agree with that at all. I think
You,
I think you can be that the two work together, and that we have aspects of each in all of us, and so it kind of goes back to the idea that I started with, that it's just a matter of how you use your energy, right? And generally men use more of the masculine energy because we're just biologically equipped to do so, right? And society, and as far as our roles in society, like Ahmed said, to be the projector, to be the one that goes out into the world and brings things back, right? And that is the assertive one, right? And so they're not saying that women can't do that. That's why I was saying it's just a usage of that kind of energy, of the masculine type of energy to go out and do things,
right.
right? And it's not connected.
Right. I think you're speaking to a utopian type of masculinity,
This is a very, very old. This is a very old concept. This is a very,
okay.
very old concept. It's
Okay.
not a utopian a way of seeing things. It's more into the, like I said, alchemical, understanding of things. But let's not get distracted to that. I wanted to come back to the idea of manhood and what it means to be a man. To be a man, and to, like the rites of passage thing we were talking about. And I want to preface this by saying, I think a lot of these are universal, meaning that they apply to men and women and womanhood as well. But when you really talk about being a man, I was like, let me write down what I actually think it means. I think it means you have the ability to make a decision, right? To make a choice, the ability to get what you want out of life without hurting anybody else or infringing on anybody else's rights, right? And so that's also like the definition of success by Napoleon Hill as well. To be able to get what you want without infringing on anyone. That's why I said it's kind of a universal thing. But the reason I'm bringing it to this conversation of manhood in this, especially in this generation, is that to me is what is lacking. When Dr. Vibe asked the question about, do you see a blurring of the lines? I see that a lot of men, especially in my generation, I'm a millennial, haven't learned how to be strong and stand into anything, right? To actually say, this is what I believe and this is what I represent and this is what I'm going to do. It's kind of like we make a decision and then we change our minds every 5 or 10 minutes.
So let me ask. I'm just going to go back to what I said there. Does masculinity comprise of being a warrior, a magician, a lover, and a king?
Okay.
I would think so.
I
But go ahead,
think we're, look, I think at the end of the day, we can all define masculinity something. We can define manhood something. I think from as this conversation began, I think we've kind of gone into a lot of different directions, which is great. That's what, these are great organic conversations. But I think, from my understanding in particular, we were having this conversation to really identify as men. And that's kind of where I kind of got confused earlier when Tachi came. I'm glad she helped me, because I thought she was talking about transgender from one to the other, and then we was able to correct that. But, now if we get into energy and all these different types of things, there's so many different ways to identify it, because then it becomes personal. And that's the beauty, I guess the beauty or the positive and negative of dealing with a social construct, is that it is an illusion to a standpoint. It can become whatever you want it to become. So you can identify with however you want to identify with it. So with that said, I think for us to be able to really, and this is just me, Dr. Vibe, this is your blab, your show. I think it would be healthy to figure out how we trying to understand in a particular context masculinity versus manhood, because we could go into a spiritual energy concept, we can go into a psychological aspect. What I mentioned was quoted from a renowned political science and educator who I've studied when I do mentorship, as that has helped me understand how to work with young men as I'm mentoring them and I'm working with them. So and so whether we agree or disagree, everybody's going to have their definition. So how do we define this as it relates to how we can identify with a particular context? I think that would, that way I can probably help, or be more productive.
So then going on that basis, Askia, what would be, you feel, a relevant context in regards to defining manhood and masculinity? Is it something you just put in context of a man's actions, his behaviors, the way he thinks? What sort of context do you feel would be valuable in regards to manhood versus masculinity? Is it something, how, I guess, and as you said, the difficult part of it is everyone's going to have their own definition.
Right.
And I fully agree. And I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm hearing a lot of different perspectives. I think that if people and everyone some people have given their definition of manhood and masculinity, I want more people to give it, because there may be areas of one's definition that you don't know about that you may want to incorporate.
Right.
In your form. And also ladies need to be involved in this too. Transgenders have to be involved in this too, because everyone has something to say that we may not know or may not have thought about. Sometimes beyond the glimpse of the obvious when it comes to another person's definition of manhood.
I want to add, because I promised someone that I would answer a comment that they made. I think his name was Young Idealist.
Okay.
So I was talking about the how someone that was transgendered, a female moving to a male. I just want to answer this because I said I would. Someone moving from female to male, that individual would even dissect masculinity and structure it to look, the picture looks like now it's totally masculine. And tying that into what C. Will said about the dynamic, the yin and the yang of the energies moving together, I, as a man, may look and see someone that is transgendered or even just gay, that I'm like, they're overcompensating. They have put so many ingredients together that they have way overcompensated for the masculinity that they're trying to portray, or the femininity that they're trying to portray. And I think that looking at it from an alchemical perspective, a perspective of energy flow or what have you, that yes, that there is a yin and a yang, a positive and a negative. And I think that the male and female coming together is a representation of that entire universe. So I definitely agree. I also agree with Askia that, of his definition of hypermasculinity. So again, there's so many dynamics to the conversation. But these are conversations that we need to have.
And C. Will came in when we were talking about expressing more of a hyper masculinity aspect, and I think he was generalizing that by thinking that that's all we're talking about is what masculinity represents, and that's what I'm saying.
That's exactly
I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. But I want to say this, Dr. Vibe, because I was raised by an amazing mother, absolutely phenomenal woman. I have an older sister who I revere. She is married to a woman. Love her. If you talk about her, you got to come through me. She is probably the most masculine person in that relationship. That's why when Tachi explained that, I was like, oh heck yeah, women can be masculine. The transgender going from a female to a male can be masculine. But what I want to say is this: when Shireen says things such as use the word protection, and Ahmed used the word protection, we're not saying women are weak. We're not saying women are powerless. My friend, one of my closest friends, she said this. She said something to me one day. She said, just because I'm a soldier doesn't mean I want my man to put me through war. And what she was saying was, don't drag me. Take care of me. I'm not saying I need you to protect me from the boogeyman. Protect my heart from being broken. Show me that I have value. Show me that what you say you mean. Demonstrate it. Your actions speak so loud I can't hear a word you say. So when we talk about protection, when Ahmed is talking about protection, when Shireen is talking about protection, we're not talking about walk out the door, get a sword, and make sure somebody like you can't defend yourself. No, we're saying that in this relationship, if it is indeed a relationship, the whole idea of relationship is saying, I watch your back, you watch my back. Isn't that what a relationship is? I'm not looking over my shoulder and you're not looking over your shoulder. My job is to look out for you and your job is to look out for me. I'm depending on you. I'm counting on you to make sure that you say that you have my best interests at heart, and I'm going to count on you for that. To protect me as I protect you. You protect one another. And so we got to get out of this thing where when a man says protect, that we think one-sided, as if we think that you are powerless. Let me tell you something. One thing I know for a fact is women are far from powerless. And that's why I started this soliloquy by saying I was raised by a woman. I have 3 daughters. Not 20, 21, 25. So I just want to make sure when we use the word protection, that is not associated with weakness. That is not associated with you not being able to go out and handle yourself. It's saying that I will not hurt you, but I will protect you. That's all it's saying.
Okay, just to jump in here, I was just doing some surfing, just reading an interesting article by a gentleman named Brett McKay. And he has a definition of manhood that I just want to put out there. So just give me about 2 minutes. I'm going to read it and we can continue the conversation. He says, his definition of manliness is simple: striving for excellence and virtue in all areas of your life, fulfilling your potential as a man, and being the absolute best brother, friend, husband, father, and citizen you can be. This mission is fulfilled by the cultivation of manly virtues like courage, loyalty, industry, resiliency, resolution, personal responsibility, self-reliance, integrity, and sacrifice. And there's 2 ways you can define manhood. One way is to say that manhood is the opposite of womanhood. The other way is to say manhood is the opposite of childhood.
I appreciate that. My only issue is when you define something as opposed to something else, it doesn't really stand on its own. But I do agree with the majority of the rest of what he was saying. What I was hearing was positive examples of strength, right? Positive traits of exercising that strength, right? And to come back to what Askia was saying about being a protector, and I think also Ahmed was talking about the balance of energy, is that I think, how can I say this? If you're looking at the yin and yang, right, you're looking at masculine and feminine energy. Generally, the feminine energy has more power, actually, right? Because it's part of the creation, right? You know, the man inserts the idea, and the woman draws in all the resources and manages it, and that's why it needs to be protected. I mean, or because it's in the process of creation, right? And so in the household, like the child is being raised, he's being grown, right? And so the woman is bringing in all or managing, should I say, the different resources, both intellectually and emotionally, for that child to grow. So this is in the traditional household that I'm talking about, right? So that being said, to me, being a man and exercising manhood includes some feminine traits as well. We need to be sensitive. We need to be understanding, right? We need to listen, right? And so I think, you know, that's why I like the topic, because I believe that, like Ahmed was saying about being over masculine, actually makes you less of a man, right? You're actually going to be less effective at being the provider, the protector, the magician, the warrior. You're going to be less effective at that because you're not actually being your whole complete self, right? And you're not actually being able to provide and protect in a way that will actually both be most beneficial, right? You're not listening. You're not being receptive, right? You're not, you know, you're just all about me and I need to gain and get more and be aggressive, you know? And so that's where we have to say, okay, let me bring some balance to myself so actually I could be a better man.
But I asked this question though, and this is where we get into a tricky area. And this is where when we have these conversations about masculinity versus manhood, and when you say, well, we have to tap into, and I'm paraphrasing what you said, well, into our feminine side of us and be sensitive. Who says being sensitive is being feminine? Who says that?
Well, I just did because I'm trying to bring this separation of idea, right? And that when I talk about masculinity and femininity, I'm not or feminism, not feminism, femininity, or feminine energy. I'm not talking about woman or man. I'm talking about a way of expressing yourself, right?
Right.
And so I'm just identifying reception with feminine and projection with masculine, right? And so using that framework, receptive or listening is a feminine trait. That's only using that framework. I'm not saying you're feminine just because you're listening, or you know, as far as your manhood is concerned.
Okay.
So that was my response.
Yeah, and I think when we begin to talk in that framework, I think one of the because the topic of the show is manhood versus masculinity, that when we speak in that framework, that instead of saying feminine energy, that maybe we should say receptive energy.
Right. I understand. I can appreciate it, because even when I was explaining it, I was like, no, I'm not feminine. So it's like, It's like, yeah. So I can appreciate taking the conversation and it's, you know, and making it more amicable for everybody. It makes sense, you know, just to recognize that, you know, we need to be able to be sensitive, right, and to listen, and that doesn't take away from our manhood at all.
But I think being a man is, being receptive, or emotionally receptive. I think that's part of manhood. I just shared. I have 3 daughters, and I can come. I guess I use this word. I can come across to people on the outside as being very sensitive when it comes to certain things as it relates to my kids. I don't have a problem with that. You know, call me sensitive. These are my daughters.
But I think that makes you a better man. You know?
Right, but exactly. But I don't associate that with a feminine trait. I associate that as far as just me being a father, me being a loving, compassionate father who loves his kids unconditionally. That's all I see it. I don't associate that with being masculine or feminine. That's just who I am, and that really is a reflection of the relationship that I have with my kids, not any type of construct of feminism or masculinity. I don't think any of that has to do with it.
I think I agree, Askia. I think that if we take it apart if we start to dissect it, then maybe it would go in certain boxes that someone may say, well, yes, because you are, a complete man and you have this ability to be receptive and caring, that once we dissect it, that now it can go in these different boxes.
Is it, just based on that point, is it dangerous to put masculinity and manhood in a box?
Yeah, well, I think when you're looking at, because like Askia said, when I came in, he was talking about hyper masculinity, right? And I think that does need to be separated from manhood, because it's definitely not the same thing, right? When we're looking for a positive definition of manhood or even masculinity, that hyper masculinity is not, it definitely needs to be separated. That's where I think this conversation, brings clarity, especially for younger people who are looking to define who they are in the world, right? And which is what separates a boy from a man. And it's not necessarily, to me, like a line you pass, like, okay, I'm 21, I'm now a man, or now I have some kind of definition. I believe you continually grow and as you go throughout life. So I wouldn't say, okay, you have arrived because you're a certain age or you have a certain level of understanding. But that being said, I think that we need to recognize, as a society and as a message that we start to put out there, that manhood consists and includes respect for women, and it does not include, these, misogynistic views that are detrimental to our family relationships and to our society in general. So I think that's to me, that's the only separation. But I believe when you come to growing as a man, yeah, you start to see all kind of dimensions to yourself that you didn't originally think were part of being a man.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree. Yeah. I agree with what Split Verse said. She said something. I think that also speaks to the hypermasculinity aspect when men use that sense of entitlement, that power to mistreat women. They use that as an excuse. Yeah, I mean, I see what I think I see what you're saying, man. I guess because and maybe I see I identify myself as a man. I don't think that anything I do from a caring and nurturing aspect is anything but still just me being a man. That's just me. I don't feel like if I'm a nurturer to my children, now if I start breastfeeding, that's different, but I can't do that. So that's something totally different.
Don't do that, bro.
But I'm serious. To me,
yeah,
I know it's
where he's coming from.
I said that jokingly, but that's where I would put that's where now for me where a box would exist. What can I do that a woman can't? What am I now doing that only a woman can do physically?
Right.
And I think the things that make her, dynamic and wonderful and unique and different from me, that I all I can do is marvel at. Those things. Other than that, Ben said, "What a visual." Yeah, that would be a visual, wouldn't it? I just don't associate that, and I guess because that's why I was really, man. That's what had me jump on when a man shared his story. I can kind of relate to that story. Mine was in college though, not high school, and I became a dad at a really young age, and I did that exact same thing. And I said, I need to be that person to take care of my family. I need to be that person to provide for my future wife and my kids. I want to be accessible. I want to be accountable. I want to be available. I just don't want to, that's that. When he said that resonated with me. And I've always been, my daughters will tell you to this day, I'm very nurturing. I'm very caring. Matter of fact, they'll even tell you right now, they'll talk to me more than they would talk to their mom. And they have a wonderful mother, absolutely phenomenal mother. But they'll come to me to talk about personal things first. So, and I don't see that as feminine. I see that as trust. I see that as, a part of that relationship dynamic that we have, that I have done something where they feel as though that I can entrust my father with these things. And I just don't see anything. I don't identify any feminine qualities or attributes to those qualities.
Aski, I think what happened is with your definition and how you just described it, I think what you did is you took it to that highest level where you transcended the concept and the definition in and of itself. So once we get to the point where we understand that there is no me or you. It's just the energy that is. It is the definition of what is. So when you get to that point, you are really transcending. Whether we're talking about manhood, masculinity, maleness, or whatever, you're just incorporating now that higher level of saying, look, this is me, and I've transcended all of these definitions, and this is who I now am.
I totally agree, Ahmed. And I think one of the things we see is that if we look at all of these predominant male archetypes that we see in media and in music and in media images that affect our young men's behavior, to have them buy into this social construct of I have to behave that way, I have to act that way in order to project some type of masculinity, then a lot of times that's where that comes from. And that's why I was saying.
I wanted to jump in real quick and also make a seat available for Mr. Garcia. But that's actually how I came to this kind of way of seeing things. I was pretty young and I was living in Baltimore, and I recognized that I was very sensitive. Like I like to spend a lot of my time with my cousin who's has a daycare, right? And I loved hanging out with the kids. I like listening to them. I can relate to them a lot. I was very, very sensitive. However, at the same time, I was studying all this material and reading and everything and trying to learn and understand how to define it, right? And so the language that they used was this masculine and feminine energy and tapping into your intuition. They ascribe those things to this kind of feminine idea of like the goddess or male kind of energy, right? And so I was like, but I'm a man, what I'm saying? Like, and at the same time, like I said, living in Baltimore, I would, at nights go run around with my cousins and do that hyper masculinity type of stuff, right? And so because I wanted it to be known, I'm a man, what I'm saying? But however, I have the sensitive side, and as time went forward, especially my family, they appreciated this, right? And then even the men would start to emulate that after a time. They would say, okay, he's really getting along with my kids and my women better than I am, right? I need to figure out what is going on here, and maybe tone down this, a-hole behavior a little bit, right? And so I just wanted to say that's kind of where I got it from. But I agree with Ahmed that it doesn't need those labels, right? It doesn't need the label, oh, this is masculine and this is feminine. No, it's just being a man. It's just being attentive. It's being emotionally intelligent. We have better language now to kind of talk around these things. But yeah, I'm definitely, and I don't consider myself feminist in any way, like as far as, I'm not, in a question about my masculinity or my manhood, right? And so I just wanted to share that actually is one of the reasons I came on, because I wanted to understand that we don't have to kind of take on this masculine kind of idea and to the detriment of ourselves as rejecting things that people may ascribe to being feminine. But anyway, I'm going to jump out but it's been a great conversation. I'll still hang around.
All right, Sewell, thanks for making the conversation.
All right,
man. Be well. Yes, Junior, you want to jump on in, and everybody, I hope that was quick. They're coming in now. And I'd like to, before we get our next friend coming on, I'd like to shout out to some people. Junior's coming in. I'd like to shout out
My man Garcia in the house.
Therese Taylor. Want to shout out. Also want to shout out Sam Teague, Ricardo McCrae, Hila Eva Laura, Izata. Thank you. If there's anyone I've missed, it is not on purpose. Also at Cultivated Sense, thank you so much for jumping in. So, Junior, what do you have to share?
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I'm trying out this new mic, so bear with me. Hey, just real quick, I want to say, hey, good night, Dr. Vibe, man. You do your thing, man. I've been busy with school trying to get this thing called a degree. I don't know what's going on with it. But anyway, hey, big up Askia. He's part of the reason why I'm in the situation I'm in right now.
Yep.
I ain't got no job.
And Ricardo too.
Yes,
Ricardo's in the room too.
I'm telling you, I was talking to these brothers while I was at work, and I quit and I fired my boss. Anyway, we'll come back to that.
Yeah, yes, sir.
So, a matter of fact, that kind of ties into it. Right now, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and so you talk about masculinity, right? so now I'm a stay-at-home dad, and with a newborn. I'm talking about like 2-3 months. You know what I'm saying? This newborn baby, and I'm a stay-at-home dad. I never ever thought that I would ever be doing this. You know, this is I've been to combat 5 different times with the U.S. Army. Wow. So I never thought in a million years I'll be a stay-at-home dad, changing Pampers and goody goo goo, and So what ends up is manhood to me started being something that you are, and the masculinity and the femininity becomes basically like a persona. It's an essence. For instance, if I'm a man and I'm talking to the kids, I could use a lot less words. I could give the look like, and that already, and women have it too. Not saying that they don't, but it's a difference when dad does it. Another thing is, imagine you're in a conversation with a woman. Watch how much power a woman has. A woman could say, instead of yelling at you, she could say, you know what, Sugar Plum, we are going to church on Sunday. Would love if you would join us. She ain't got to yell. She ain't got to scream. She don't have to do a lot of things to get that man off the couch. Let's say she needs you to empty the trash, and she said, and you finally get up and you empty the trash, and she looks at you and she said, you know what, King, your biceps is looking really good, and you emptying that trash. You're like, oh yeah, that's right, and it's just a crazy thing. There is so much power in feminine. I did martial arts too. My wife has never lost a fight. Of course, I teach my daughter how to fight. So there's a lot of power, and it's a whole different type of protection. And it's like you said, Askia, it's a whole different thing because when I'm on deployment, my wife is the protector. She is waking up early and she's doing a million different things, and nobody is gonna, just come behind her and steal her lunch money. It's just not gonna happen. But when I'm here, it's kind of like she becomes codependent because she know I'm gonna pull the slack.
That's right.
So it really doesn't come into a feminine or masculine. It's just a partner type deal. It really comes down to a partner type deal. So again, manhood. There was times, I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't have a dad. And there was times when I was scared because I'm raising my kids by myself. And one time I was dropping my son off to school, and I felt so inefficient. I felt so like things were falling apart in my life. And I'm like, man, you know what? This guy would do so much better without me. And it's not like I wanted to take my life, but I ain't going to lie to y'all. Like I could tell you right now, it's being recorded. Listen, I wanted to run. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I wanted to run because I felt like I was dropping the ball on so much different things in my life. But then, God is good, but you start learning what manhood really is. And
that's it.
Manhood and masculinity, they don't really, it's almost like 2 different things. It's just the way that you do something might seem masculine. But manhood is really just being there. Manhood is something like Sam Teague said earlier, it's just it's something that you grow into. And your culture, of course, makes it different. I, as an island boy, grew up on an island. So, you don't be crying. You walk a certain way. You walk with your left foot out a little bit. You say things a certain way. You don't, hey, big man, what are you dealing with? So it's a whole different, raising, but it's man, it's worldwide, and manhood is really the role that you take, and masculinity, I believe, is the persona or just the way that you go about accomplishing this manhood.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow.
Big up on yourself, man.
First of all, man, I gotta, Dr. Vi, every time this young man get on screen, man, I gotta give him nothing but props, man. This dude, man, this dude is doing it. For those in the comments, this was a young man when we were doing the blabs, man, months and months and months ago. And we saw the passion. Ricardo, myself, and Dr. Vi, we saw the passion in this man's eyes, man, the fervor, the fortitude to this dude made a stance that day and said, I'm tired of flirting with mediocrity. He said, I will no longer flirt with mediocrity. And this guy made an action move, and he took it and he ran with it. And every time I see this dude pop up in the comment, man, my eyes light up, man. And I just gotta say, man, just hearing your story, bro, it's just absolutely, and that is manhood.
Yep.
that is exactly what manhood is about.
No, that's just absolutely fabulous, and I'm speaking it that there is a book in your
I left
journey.
a news anchor job, guys.
yeah.
ABC News. Oh man.
Hey, man, but you know what, man? One of my favorite scriptures is that it says, a man that put his hand on the plow and look back is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. And it's like, once you go on that journey, man, and once you step out, man, you don't look back.
True that.
Because all you're doing is looking back to that comfort zone. You know what I mean?
True.
And the comfort zone is gonna always be there. Matter of fact, you can find comfort zones on your way to where you're headed. You can, you know what I mean? Comfort zones are everywhere. But nah, dude, it's every time I see you, man, it's aspirational, man.
True that. Appreciate that, man. Dr. Vi, keep up the good work, man.
Hey, right back at you. We're doing it together, man.
For sure. I'm gonna clear up some space so you get some more people, I guess.
All right, man. So thanks so much for making the conversation better, and keep in touch with Ricardo and Esquio. All right, my man.
All right, man. Good seeing you, man.
Well, keep the faith. Wow, that's huge. Talk about adding value in about 3 minutes.
Oh yeah, fascinating, man. Some big things coming in his future. Big things.
Absolutely, and we're here to help him any way we can. Any way we can. Anyone else wanting to jump into a seat? I think we're going to wind it down pretty soon. We're hitting the I wonder if I'll ever do a 30-minute show. I was going to say 30-minute show. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Not possible. I think we lost Askia.
No, I'm right here.
Okay, no, never. So no, this manhood versus masculinity, we've been a little bit all over the place tonight, but I think we'd say pretty much the foundation was laid. And again, it's one of those challenging things, as I say, thank you, Team Event, that it just gets more and more different. One of the challenging things for men is the definition of what manhood is, masculinity is always changing. And it's not always a black and white thing. There's more and more shades of gray, as we've discussed some of those shades of gray this evening. Askia, anything else you want to add?
No, man. As always, great conversation, man.
I listen. Well, Junior, I'm humbled. I can't wait till all this becomes a national TV show. I received that big time. Anyone else want to jump in and take a seat for a few minutes before we turn it off? Live recording wise, anyone else have any other comments? I like and believe that each man has his own set of qualities that define him, and that's where your man. I like that. Sam T, good words. Each man has his own set of qualities that define him, and that's where your manhood lives. Well put. Well put. Well, we're gonna turn off the live recording. I have too much to say to close this off. LOL. Well, then why didn't you jump in earlier, Split Verse? There was a seat open for a while. No problem. I just like to say thanks to everyone who has jumped in on the conversation, whether via taking a seat or through comments. It's like this is my third night of epic conversations, and thank to everyone out there. I've tried to shout everyone that I can out there, and I don't know if it's just myself, but my resolution is sort of funny right now. But I'd like to thank everybody who came out, took some time out of your schedules to make the conversation better. And as I said, we'll keep on doing it every week with the manhood conversation. I also just want to lay down again the four powers that every man has: the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the king. May have to do a conversation on those four. May have to do it. Split verse. Next time, I don't want to overstep. Oh, you weren't overstepping at all. No problem. We not going anywhere. So, if you want to touch base with Askia, his Twitter handle is there. He also has a fantastic website called blacknarrative.com. Check it out. Get on the mailing list. I'm on the mailing list. Why can't you? If you want to touch base with me, Twitter handle is there at drvibeshow. Email is dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Thank you. If anyone would like to press love and show love by pressing 1. Who enjoyed tonight's conversation? Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. It has been a last 3 days have been very intense. For some of you, I do a live podcast show on Sunday nights, and on Sunday night we started with a Black Men's Roundtable. We had Black men from Canada and the United States discussing what went on in the United States last week, and that was a 2.5-hour conversation. I will put up the link for it if you want to listen to it. It just went live today, so I'll give you that link right now on the side. So that's the link to that conversation. And that was men from Canada and the United States talking about what went on. And then last night, I can recognize some people were on last night too. Last night was an epic conversation, which has led now to basically, we're talking about the aftermath of last week in the United States for all of us. And now that has sparked basically every Monday at 7 o'clock, I'm going to be hosting a different topic in regards to what needs to help the community. So I've got a whole bunch of different topics. Just keep a watch on the Blab platform, a different one each week, and just keep on feeding the ideas. 99% of them I'm going to host. So just keep on. This show is about you and for you. And for those who don't know about you, we need to get that message out there. We need to get the message out. Is that 4 shows now? Well, on Blab, yeah, I guess. Well, Blab and my weekly podcast, 4 shows, yes. So everything's up, my man. So touch base with me if you have any suggestions for conversation topics. I won't give anything out. I think I have one for next Monday, but I'm not going to let it out till maybe later on this week. So if you're following me on Blab, you'll get the notification. But just dial in anyways, 7 o'clock next Monday. We're going to be chatting, and it's going to be a lot of fun, but a lot of education and how we can move forward. So, as always, I like to say, that conversation last night rippled into many more and is still across the blobosphere. Well, you know what? That's a good thing, because I don't want it all to be about me. I know individuals like Askia don't want it all to be about them. We're just wanting to, how can I say, just create more meaningful conversations and action, positive action. So if it's going to be us to create more action, all of you are doing it in your own way, and I encourage you to do it. And if I can provide any support, please just ask. As you know, on all my blabs, I say, come on in, add to the conversation. So I like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles, and you're a solution for someone's problem. God bless. Peace to you all. Keep the faith. I don't know if I'm going to be hosting anything else on Blab this week, but I'll be popping in here, there, everywhere. So God bless, peace, well, keep the faith. Bye-bye.